I'll tell you one thing that
Hey, when my girls start to trip and hate before escape, I call Sirius XM 98. Yeah, Thursdays the Foxxhole 7 to 9 to talk to ZoWilliams before I lose my mind. Yo, I need advice on my relationship, cause I'm about to start breaking. I can't take it no more. I got to holler at Zo, the relationship pro. Before I pack up and go, I got my foot out the door and down for leaving. But first, let me holler at Zo, the voice of reason. I got my foot out the door and down for leaving. But first, let me holler at Zo, the voice of reason.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zometheus Rising back in the Foxxhole once again with another heater. 88% of parents admit they've done it. Tonight's topic is a crazy one. 855-369-9898. Once again, that's 855-369-9898. You gotta call us. If you're a parent, you understand what we're going through right now. You got to follow me on Facebook first and Twitter at ZoWilliams. That's at ZoWilliams. You got to follow me because the conversation is interactive. We're going to go to the website, Twitter. We're going to go to Facebook. We're going to talk and take everybody's questions on this. Please follow me and get at me. Oh, and you can get us at Foxxhole as well. Foxxhole is our corporate Twitter. Yes, at Foxxhole. Call me right now. Tonight's topic is crazy. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. Uh-oh. I know there's some people out there whooping kids' asses right now. Is it abuse? I mean, I don't know. We've got crazy questions, crazy guests. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. I'm going to take a quick break, but I need you to go to my website, www.ZoWilliams.com. Email me, zo@SiriusXM.com. Follow me on Twitter at ZoWilliams. This conversation is about to be off the chain. When I come back, questions. See you in a second. Ladies and gentlemen, ZoWilliams is back in the building. Tonight's topic is a crazy one. I mean, it's a controversial one, too, because you got a lot of kids out there savvy now. I'll just call CPS if you whoop my butt. For all y'all that don't know what CPS is, that's Child Protective Services, right? Tonight's topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child. An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. Somebody call me right now at 855-369-9898. Do you whoop your kids? You know I got to go to questions. Let me ask everybody out there that's listening to me right now, though. If you got your butt whooped, what was your mother's or father's favorite choice of ass-whooping weapons? I call them weapons because it's war. Raising kids is war. My great-grandmother, we used to call her Big Mama. Big Mama had what was known as Dr. Green, and that was especially long, thick at the root, thin at the top switch. You know, thick at the root so she can wield it, but thin at the top so it could whip like whoosh. It was called Dr. Green for her. What did you get spanked with? Now let me ask you these questions. Should spanking your child out of anger be illegal? That's an interesting 855-369-9898. You got to get to your phone lines right now. Call me. At Twitter, I'm on Twitter, at ZoWilliams. Does the Bible tell us how to discipline our children? I've heard the saying, spare the rod, spoil the child. Is that even in the Bible? We've got Bible verses. We've got them here. If so, does this mean we should spank our children for doing wrong? Maybe the rod is some other type of metaphor. You know, the whole Bible is allegorical. We can make it mean whatever we want it to, right? Most people do. Right? The snake handlers, you shall take up snakes. Next thing you know, they got snakes. Preaching with snakes. I don't know. Somebody call me, 855-369-9898. What was the worst thing you got a spanking with? For me, it was braided switches. My sister, she used to go pick a bunch of switches and braid them together. She wouldn't trust me to go get my own switch because I would bring back a puny one. No, she would, go pick the best switches in the land and then braid them together. As a parent, are you for or against spanking your children? Do you feel like spanking helps to make a child a better or maybe a worse person? A lot of research out there says, spanking has some antisocial effects. Maybe it works in the short term, but in the long term, people be jacked up. How many of you got spanked and you turned out okay? Somebody call me right now, 855-369-9898. If you're just tuning in, tonight's topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. True or false? Spanking is really a form of family domestic violence. Woo. And some of you people out there, parents out there, don't act like you ain't never lost control and spanked out of anger, spanked out of frustration. How many of you got spanked out of frustration? How many of you got spanked out of anger? You were just on your mama's nerve and pow, right up against the cheekbone. It's done happened. A lot of people believe that this generation is lost because they ain't got the smackdown the way we did. True or false? If you spank your child, you may inadvertently teach them to use violence as a means to resolve conflict. I got questions. Oh, here's a great question. And unfortunately, this is a real situation in some cases. Do you know of a parent who used spanking as a means of deterring their child from an emerging sexual orientation? Beat them straight. I'm going to beat the gay out of you. I've heard of it. I know of people like that. Somebody call me right now, 855-369-9898. One more again. I'm going to tell you what tonight's topic is, and I'm going to give you the phone lines because this is your show. I want you to participate. I want you to share your stories. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. Well, let me put myself on the Barbie. I whoop ass. I've got 3 children, and every now and again, I got to put hands down. Now, let me just say, I don't whoop out of frustration. I might whoop out of disappointment. I'm disappointed in you. You could have did better. You should have done better. You made a poor decision, and now I've got to get your attention in a way where you understand that what you did wasn't cool. And I think, me personally, the lecture goes hand in hand with the ass whooping. So many people whoop out of frustration and whoop out of anger that they're not even in a space to sit down and have a conversation with the child in a way or in a language that they understand. And being able to articulate what the problem is. Hey, man, this is why I'm whooping you. These are the reasons. Now, some people are just upset. And did I tell you? I ain't even going to go into that. What I'm going to do now, I'm going to go to the phone lines. I want to hear your stories. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. I stole something from a friend of mine once. He told his son, the only thing you got to worry about in life is to keep me off your ass. That's the only thing you got to worry about. As long as you worried about me being on your ass. And that's what he told his son in order to keep him in line. Now, his son's a football player and doing his thing and good grades and all of that. I'm wondering right now, do children respond more to fear than they do to reverence or revering their parents naturally? Do children have to be afraid in order to respect their parents? I mean, is spanking an effective deterrent? I don't know. Callers, tell me what you think. Troy from Florida, you're in the building.
How you doing? I was just go off my stories. Well, my mom, I was a bad kid anyway. I deserved it. You know what I'm saying? I have kids now, and they're lashing back out at me for what I did to my mom. So, but the whoopings, I mean, they actually did work, man. I didn't like them at the time, and my mom had like a specialty move called touch your toes. Oh. And I actually had to touch my toes, and then she would come with the belt You know what I'm saying? She said, I won't begin until you touch the toes. You know what I'm saying? I'll keep them sitting there jumping and all that. I was like, oh, man. So one of them times I actually ran away. You know what I'm saying? Just because, I wasn't trying to get no ass with him no more. Tell you the truth.
Man, Troy, you're not the only one who's experienced that. And the question is, let me ask you, did she do it bare bottom or did you get whooped with clothes on?
I'm going to tell you, like, I started with clothes on before, and then I used to wear, like quadruple pairs of underwear. And then and she found out about that, and then she went ahead and just took it off.
Wow. Thank you for the call. Appreciate it, man. Thanks, man. Troy was the first caller from Florida. You got a story? Call me right now, 855-369-9898. We really appreciate every caller, and we're going to try to accommodate everybody. My question is there a nonviolent alternative to spanking that works just as well? How many of you out there are proponents of timeout? A lot of people like white people do timeout. Ain't no black people doing timeout. I don't know. Are there some black people out there who think timeout works? Somebody call me and let me know. 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. 855-369-9898. Here's another very interesting question before I go to my next caller. Verbal abuse. Is verbal abuse becoming the new spanking of choice? Sometimes getting cussed out, you might get that instant, oh, wow, mom is mad at me or dad's mad at me. But what are the long-term effects of verbal abuse? And does verbal abuse have a deeper, more long-lasting, hurtful legacy than the spanking with the belt? Somebody call me right now. What is your favorite choice of weaponry when whooping that ass? Call me, 855-369-9898. I'm going to the callers. Big Joe from Charlotte, you're the voice of reason. Talk to me.
What's going on, sir?
What's happening, man?
Hey, man, I'm going to tell you. My dad, he used to whip me on the butt with his cowhide belt. That stopped working, so he started whipping me on my hand with that belt. And sometimes he would catch that forearm, man, and it was, woo! But in the second grade one time, I'll never forget this. I'm 42 right now. In the second grade, I threw a chair at the teacher.
Oh.
My dad had to get out from work to come up to the school. He pulled my pants down in front of the classroom and whooped me in front of the class. After that day, I made nothing but A's and B's in school, all the way up to high school. He never had to come back to school again. But
Big Joe, let me ask you this really quickly. With today's standards, that would be considered child abuse. And let me tell you why. My youngest son, I hadn't seen him in 4.5 years. His mother took him and moved to Grand Rapids, Michigan. They're back in California now. And I've been able to hang out with my son and chill with my son. But before she left, she was in trouble. She was in trouble with CPS, right? Child Protective Services. He did something similar to what you did. He didn't throw no chair. But what's similar is he got in trouble. Moms comes to the school. She's upset that he got in trouble. She pulls him out of the classroom, takes him into the girls' bathroom, spanks his ass. Apparently there were some little girls in there tinkling. They go back and tell, yo, this little kid getting his ass whooped. Well, somebody at the school reported her to Child Protective Services. They called me. You ready to come get your son? Because this lady ain't letting us check him out to see if he's okay. We want to see if there are any broken bones. My question to all the listeners and Big Joe, are today's standards, in the sense, how we got spanked back in the day, would today's standards classify what our parents did as child abuse? Talk to me, Big Joe.
Man, you know what, though? This is the way I look at it, man. You have to, you got to start early with children. You got to start the discipline early, and it varies from child to child. Because, just like my daughter, I didn't have to spank her like I had to spank my son. And I never spanked either one of them while I was mad. I would calm down, but they would still get the spanking. But you got to do what you say, and you got to say what you're going to do.
Right. Thank you for the call, man. I appreciate it. This is a crazy topic, because parenting kids, I always say a little discipline. When I say discipline, there are other ways to discipline a child other than just spanking them. Of course, you can take things away that mean something to them. You know, for instance, my oldest children's mother, she's a great mother. She's a great woman. Her sister, how they disciplined their older child, it was crazy. Now, dude is college graduate and, you know, he got more money than them. He done learned the stock market and all kind of things. But what this young brother did what his parents did for him when he was younger, basically when he got in trouble, once he came home from school, his entire room was empty except for his bed. They took the TV, they took posters off the walls, they took everything. Video, and when I say it was empty, it was bare. It was stripped down to nothing. They moved everything that meant something to him to the garage. Now, of course, that's labor intensive, but it was an effective deterrent. They didn't really have to put the smack down because he knew every time he came home after he did something foolish, he would be coming home to what was in effect a cell. He didn't have nothing in there. It was like jail. What do you think about that method? 855-369-9898. If you're just tuning in, this is ZoWilliams, the voice of reason on Foxxhole Radio. Tonight's topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child. Did God get it wrong? Is God teaching us how to be violent to raise our kids? Is discipline in the form of spanking, corporal punishment? Corporal means body. Let's punish the body, right? Is God teaching us how to whoop ass? Is God a warring God and he's teaching us to raise the kids under the oppression of fear? Somebody call me, 855-369-9898. We've got callers. Damon from New York. You're in the voice of reason. Let me hear what you have to say.
How you doing, Zoe? Listen,
Hi,
I
man.
was born in the Caribbean. I was born Jamaican, and whoop ass is a part of life. You know, I got 3 girls right now, and if you give trouble, and there's a way to spank your kids. That's why they have an ass. You use the belt, you spank them on the ass. There's no child abuse in that. Spank them on the ass, tell them why you're spanking their ass. But when they get older, you got to use psychology. Like my first daughter, she's 16. She do something wrong, she lose certain stuff, certain privilege. You can't do this, you can't go out, no computer, no phone. So, you know, that's how I see it.
Wow, that's good stuff, man. Thank you very much. I appreciate the call. You're all welcome to call in right now and share your discipline stories. How do you discipline your child? Do you spank them? Are you pro spanking or against spanking? We have guests, we have authors, we got all kind of people that are going to come on and share. I want to know what you think. I want to know what's on your mind. Somebody call me right now at 855-369-9898. Again, the topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? Should a child be spanked even if they are contrite and sorry for doing wrong? Like, what if your child did something really, really bad, but came to you and was like, you know, I'm sorry. I know it was wrong. It was whack. I apologize. Whatever I can do to make it up, can you allow me to make it up? Would you still whoop that ass? Somebody call me right now and let me know what you would do about it. I mean, it's crazy. But let me just say what the last caller said was very, very powerful in my opinion. I always said on this show, when you're a parent, in the beginning of your parenting, when the child is very young, you're a dictator. You're a tyrant for the most part because the child is fully reliant on you, your decision-making process, right? What you teach him, and not just verbally, but non-verbally. A lot of people don't realize a tremendous amount of communication in a household is non-verbal. That's why the do as I say, not as I do doesn't really work, because kids are taking in the full 3-dimensional experience of you as a parent. So, with that said, whooping ass or you know, spanking them and going through that whole machination, sometimes it doesn't work, especially if you're contradictory in your presentation of yourself versus the discipline you hand out. So I always say you're a dictator in the beginning, but as the child gets older, you have to transition from being a dictator and more of a mentor. A lot of people don't agree with that. A lot of people still, hey, if you in my house, these my rules. You know, some people are hard-lined on it. Somebody call me right now and let me know what you think. 855-369-9898. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? We have Renisha from Iowa. Renisha, what do you think about tonight's topic?
Hey, Zoe. First off, my mom, when I was growing up, would jack me up with Hot Wheel tracks. We get Hot Wheel tracks, extension cords in the shower, in the bath with my sister. So I know what it's like. And I actually have 4 kids. I'm 34. Mm-hmm. My oldest is 14. And I had the police called on me not too long ago for whooping my daughter's ass. So, and when the police came to the door, I told them, you going to whoop her ass if she go to juvenile. So I'm going to whoop her ass to keep her out of juvie.
So do me this. What exactly did you do to her? What type of smackdown did you put on her?
I just got into at the time I had just gotten into a new relationship, and she tried to disrespect my boyfriend, who is now her stepfather. So she tried to say, I hate you. Now, number one, we black. I don't play that old white I hate you stuff. I'm sorry, that sounds terrible, but
what? Black people say we hate you too.
No, but she lost it. Like, we live in a whiter area, so she tried to act like one of her little friends from school. Oh, I hate you, all this stuff. So I told her I don't play that. You will not disrespect your elders. You will not disrespect your father figure. Your father is not in your life. I laid it down.
Were you trying to force your boyfriend onto her as a father figure?
No. They respect him, and now, they see nothing but him. But I think a kid will challenge you.
But wait a minute. At the time, how soon were you saying respect this dude as a father figure? How soon
2 years
were you?
in. 2 years in.
It was 2 years in.
And we
he had been
had a
around
child together too. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And how old was she at this time?
I will say this: my kid, she was around 11, but she
So was she still missing? Let me ask you this: was she still missing her father?
No, her father's been gone for 10 years.
Was he dead?
He was in prison. No,
he was in prison. Okay,
prison. So he is the only man that they know.
Wow.
I've never let other men. When I was dating other men, I would never let other men meet my children. He was the first guy that they had met. So I knew, that's a process. I would not bring just any man around my kids.
So as a mother, what is your weapon of choice?
We used a belt. But
and what was the worst thing you've ever spanked somebody with? When I say somebody, I don't mean your boyfriend. I mean the kids.
I don't. Yeah, it's different. No, right now it's really just a belt. I'll use a plastic spoon. I keep that in my car. But
a plastic spoon?
Oh yeah, I use a mixing spoon in a heartbeat. I whip back, pop, and we keep going.
Wow, wow.
And that's it. Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for the call. I appreciate it. You're welcome anytime to get in contact with us here at the Voice of Reason. Thursday night, 7 to 9 p.m. Pacific Standard Time, 10 p.m. to midnight Eastern Standard Time every Thursday. ZoWilliams, the Voice of Reason on Foxxhole Radio. This is what we do. Tonight's topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? Can you raise a smart, conscious, self-aware, respectful child without the use of corporal punishment, without spanking? Somebody call me right now, 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial, 855-FOX-9898. Follow me on Facebook. Everybody follow me on Facebook. Follow me on Twitter, at ZoWilliams. Go to my website, www.ZoWilliams.com, or email me, zo@SiriusXM.com. I'm going to take one more caller before I go to break. No, I'm going to go to break first. Then I'm going to come back and get to the rest of the callers. Get to your phone lines right now. It's a crazy topic. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. ZoWilliams will be back in 2.2. Peace.
My grandmother's the lady who used to discipline me, right? Beat my ass. Anyone here remember them switches? Right, you used to have to go get off the tree yourself and take them leaves like that. I see them trees today, I will kill one of them motherfuckers. I will stop the car and say, wait, hold it, Jeff, listen, you ain't never gonna grow up. You won't be beating nobody's ass. Right, because that's some hell. Do I have a tumor or did it get dark in here? Because that's some hell of a psychology, right? To make you go get a switch to beat your own ass with. Right? My grandma said, boy, go get me something to beat your ass with. And that would be the longest walk in the world, right? To be talking about. all kind of shit, right? Because you know you done fucked up, Jack. Maybe it'll snow before I get there or something. Maybe she'll have a heart attack and won't be able to whoop me. I don't want to get no whoop because it's going to tear it up. I know it. And you know you couldn't come back with no little switch, right? Because if you did, she'd go out and get the tree and beat your ass with it, right? Please, I don't want to get a whooping. And you get them switches and they start cutting the wind on the way home right here. Make you start crying before you get in the house. Like, Mama! And my grandmother would get mad and beat your ass with anything, right? You know, old douchebag card, anything. Right? Anyone here remember them old douchebags they used to have? Them big red boys? Used to hang in the bathroom, hold 8 gallons of water.
Ladies and gentlemen, Zomethius Rising, the voice of reason, has returned to the Foxxhole. Richard Pryor, the greatest ever, you know. How many of your children need a love TKO, right? How many of you got to put the smack down in order to restore order and justice to your household? Or is this an old, archaic, barbaric way to bring up children? Tonight's topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child. An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. 855-369-9898. The show is off the chain. The phone lines are on fire. Call me. I'm getting to everyone. This is a caller-driven show, and you are appreciated here more than I am. Get on your phone lines and call me right now, 855-369-9898. Again, let me just say this. I don't know. How many of you guys go to YouTube, and I think it's called Fat Kid Slaps Mother. Now, this happened in 2007 on Dr. Phil. The little kid, very intelligent, bright kid, but he went off, and he smacked his mom. Go to YouTube, look up the video. It's crazy. I want to see if you guys can see this. Does that child deserve to be spanked? I don't know. We have a guest author here. We're going to ask her. But before I bring her on, I just want to remind you guys, the topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. The number to dial, I need you to get to your phone lines right now, 855-369-9898. And please tweet me at ZoWilliams or at Foxxhole. That's Foxxhole. Now, our guest that I'm about to bring on, she's an author, wrote an incredible book. We have it in our hands here. An incredible book, Discipline Without Distress. 135 tools for raising, caring, responsible children without timeout, spanking, punishment, or bribery. Now, she must have found the parental fountain of youth, because I don't know how you can do that. I don't know how you can raise a kid without spanking or timeouts, punishment. I don't know. So it's apparent that this book is amazing. Again, the title of the book, and I urge all of my listeners to go out, find the book, get the book. Support the author, because apparently I haven't thought of one way, maybe two ways, but she has 135 tools for raising, caring, responsible children without timeout, spanking, punishment, or bribery. Without further ado, I must bring her in because she has a lot to teach us all, including myself. None other than Judy Arnall. Welcome to the Voice of Reason, Judy. Talk to us about this wonderful gift you've given parents all over the world.
Oh, good evening.
Good evening to you. What's going on?
First, I got to tell you, my parents used a piece of wood called the Board of Education,
Ooh.
which was a lot of fun.
The Board of Education.
Yeah, so I grew up and I decided I was never, ever going to spank my kids. So I raised 4 boys and a daughter without ever spanking them. And people would say to me, well, how do you do that? Because, of course, we've encountered every challenge in parenting. And my question would be, what do you do when spanking doesn't work on a kid? What do you go to if you don't use spanking? So I found lots of ways that work with all different types of kids, and I put them together in a book. And I also asked other parents, what do you use without spanking? And we compiled a book of every challenge and what to do.
Wow. So can I just have 3 highly effective methods that are nonviolent that work just as good or better than corporal punishment?
Well, my number 1 go-to method is give him a hug. Second is
what if he stole the rent money?
Well,
that happens.
Kids act to meet their needs, right? And it depends on their ages. There's not every misbehavior of a child has a different age-specific thing to do, but generally for all kids, if you talk to them, if you hug them, if you show them what to do instead, I'd say every kid would respond.
Well, you know what? I agree with the show them what to do instead, but I don't necessarily agree with the hug because it might be confusing, and maybe you can help me with this. It might be confusing to the child because if the child does something negative and you hug them, that might be a sign of approval of what he's done. So how do you reconcile that potential conflict?
That's usually a concern of parents, too. And when you use a hug is usually when kids are upset, right? They hit people, they throw things, they wreck things, and a hug just connects you to them. It calms them down, and then they're open to listening. If you spank them, you shut them down. They don't want to hear what you have to say next.
Well, in some cases that's true, but what about in the case where the spanking is the attention grabber?
I would say use something else to grab their attention. And it can be anything. It depends on the age of the kid, but if a child is 2 and running in the street, you want to grab them. You don't want to hit them, right? That grabs their attention. If a child is 13, you need to sit them down and say, look, we need to talk. Let's go for a walk.
So, Judy, because I love what you're saying right now, can I give you my bad parenting CPS moment, my Child Protective Services moment? This is my Child Protective Services moment. My oldest son, he's 14 right now. He's on his way to the 9th grade. He's on varsity right now. He's a great kid. But when he was 3, I still play ball all the time. And he would come to the gym with me. I would bring him with me or whatever and sit him down, and he would watch me play. But then one day, I sat him down, and normally he would never move. He'd just sit there and watch Dad play. And then one day he got up and left the gym. And I'm in full heat of combat on the court. So I look up. Now, I told this other basketball player who was off the court, I said, watch my son. Don't let him leave. But he never leaves. But this time, he left. And when I looked up, my son was gone, and I told the dude, hey, where's my kid? He was like, I don't know. He was sitting right there. Okay, hell, I got to leave the court now. So I leave the court flummoxed. I'm upset. Like, where's my son? His mama going to kill me. Oh, my God. I was hot. He was only 3. Now, what happened was my brother was there, and we walked all around this enormous park. When I tell you we found my son, I mean, he was so far away from the gym when we finally found him. He was way over on a soccer field with a bunch of other kids. And what happened was there was an older kid who came into the gym and took his ball. And he followed the kid to get his ball back. Now, here's my CPS moment. I was relieved when I saw him. Oh, there he is. God damn it. My brother found him. And when he brought him to me, I tapped him on his leg. Don't you ever leave me. And I had to catch myself. Wait a minute. He don't know. And then the little Mexican kid said, well, he followed me because I took his ball. Well, what you doing with my son's ball? Who is you to begin with? So that was my little CPS moment. That's the only one I've ever had. Well, that's the only one I'll ever admit to. Anyway, call us right now, 855-369-9898. We have a great author on the show right now. Her name is Judy Arnall. She wrote the book Discipline Without Distress, 135 Tools for Raising Caring, Responsible Children Without Timeout, Spanking, Punishment, or Bribery. Judy, is there a difference between discipline and punishment?
Definitely, yes.
What's the difference?
And this is what we want to look at in the Bible is discipline comes from the Latin word meaning disciple, which means to teach.
Student. Yeah.
Punishment really means to hurt. And that's what parents need to know is, what am I teaching my kids? Am I teaching them it's okay to lose control and hit someone? Because that's what you're doing when you're spanking. You're teaching them to hit somebody else. But discipline can be very non-punitive. It can be teaching them what to do next. This is the adult way. This is what you should do. And a lot of that is modeling it, too. How can we teach kids self-control when we lose ours?
Well, that's one of the things they say when spanking a child. You should never spank while you're angry. But here's the conflict. If you say punishment means to hurt, isn't spanking and corporal punishment in and of itself inflicting pain? Right?
Absolutely.
Well, and if that's the case, spanking really shouldn't be done. But at the same time, verbal abuse hurts. At the same time, psychological punishment hurts. You know what? You come home to an empty room. You don't have a television. You don't have internet. You don't have iPods. You don't have telephones. That hurts to a degree too. So punishment is all kind of hurtful. So why don't you give us the definition of what corporal punishment is?
Corporal punishment is any physical punishment. Now, it includes a lot of things, not just spanking, but it can include making kids kneel in rice, or a lot of physical punishments don't leave bruises, but they hurt. And you're right, punishment can include timeouts, taking away privileges, consequences. A lot of those things are designed to hurt kids. The problem with that is it tends to shut down the relationship. That's what you're giving up. You may win the argument, but you lose the relationship when you punish.
You know, I love what you're saying right now, but check this out. I think when all you have in your parental disciplinary tool bag is spanking, then you're out the game. If you don't have a psychological game or some type of wisdom or some type of knowledge, both emotional, spiritual, mental, as well as physical, if you don't have something to give other than spanking, then the purpose of spanking is lost on the child. You agree or disagree?
I agree. And as a parent, you got to decide the difference between, is this a discipline issue or is this a development issue? In your case, a 3-year-old doesn't have the self-control to listen to parents. So that's brain development.
Right.
The parent's job there is just kind of to supervise and keep them safe. And if you know when a child doesn't know better and when they do know better, that kind of helps you to what tool in your toolbox to use.
Right. So give me 2 more of your go-to preventative methods before you go over the edge and pull the belt out. What are the 2 or your 2 favorite choices? The first one was hug. What else?
Okay, for young kids, I would say child-proof, keep them safe, and distract them. Because little kids don't have a lot of self-control, so you have to control their environment. The third one, for big kids, I would say talk to them. We tend to use that as our second choice, spanking first, talk later, but we don't tend to go to that as our first choice. And that's what kids want. They want to talk.
But you know what, Judy? It's really difficult to just say talk to them when we saw on YouTube this kid having a conversation with his mother on the Dr. Phil show, and he smacked the Kool-Aid. I mean, hot sauce came out this woman's mouth, and that was his mama. Fat kid slaps mother on Dr. Phil. All you got to do is YouTube that phrase, and you'll see this kid smack the pepper jack sauce out of his mother's mouth. Now, talking, I mean, it's obvious that we're well beyond talking. And now research says that spanking leads to antisocial behavior, or it leads to violence, or it leads to bullying. When you see this little kid, you know that this is the rebirth of maybe Charlie Manson. Somebody call me right now, 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. Judy, do you mind talking to some of our callers?
Oh, I'd love to.
All right, tonight's topic is, sparing the rod, spoiling the child. How many of us have whooped ass to the degree that, we may be in child abuse zone? Somebody call me right now. I'm going to the callers. Callers, it's your turn. It's time to have fun. Me and Judy Arnall will try to deal with all of your situations. Let's get active. Kathy from Georgia, what is on your mind?
Yes, it's Catfish. I was calling in reference to the child abuse thing and beating the child. My son is 13 years old. I love him to death. I show him in the Bible. If you don't obey, then I show him about obeying your parents. Then I show him about sparing the rod. That means I'm going to beat his ass. For one, I'm 5'1", and he's almost 6 foot tall at 13. I tell him, look, you're going to either let me beat your ass or I'm going to tase you.
You're going to tase him?
Yes.
You mean like with a taser?
Yes, I do. He's taller than me, and he showed out with me. And he played football, and he ran me all around our apartment complex. I'm a single parent. And he ran the hell out of me. I had to lay down for 2 days. My blood pressure was high. I couldn't even catch this boy. The people around the pool talking about, oh, my God, he can run. Who team he play on? I was tired of running behind this damn boy. And I told him, next time you do something, I'm going to tase your ass. So I went out, I got a taser, and I get the taser, and I set the taser out, and I set the belt out. And he raised up on me, and he told me, you weak, when I was hitting him with the belt. I said, all right, well, I'm going to box your ass. Listen, because he called himself balling his fist up, and he hit the wall and turned out, ooh, you my mama, I want to hit you. I said, yeah, you right on your mama, and you damn sure ain't going to hit me, because long as your Social Security number ain't bringing no check up in this house, you going to obey and you going to listen.
Wow. Judy, you got to give her some tips. And now this is a high-end, tough situation. What can you tell Kathy of Georgia to do with her 13-year-old boy? I don't think sitting down and having a conversation will work on this one. What do you think?
Well, I think it could be a long road to that. It might be hard for him to open up. The first question I'd say is, how is your relationship? Like, do you ever talk? Does he respect you?
Yes, I make him say yes, ma'am. I make him say no, ma'am. And this happened before, like months before Mother's Day. So he sat down and he wrote me a card. He said, Mama, I thank you for all the love you showed me, for the discipline. And he told me, I thank you for not letting me wear my pants down. And I was so proud of that card. He written this card, and he made it with some construction paper. He liked the discipline because every morning we get up and we pray together. But I tell him, if you act out and you talk back, I'm going to have to check your ass. Because I'm not going to let him run on me. This is a big boy. He's 13. He's in a size 11 shoe. His father ain't involved in it. He's in the military, and I was in the military, and I believe every child should go to the military to get some discipline. Because sometimes it don't work with that hood. And I still hug him every day. Every morning before we go to school, I say, Rashad, I love you. God is in control. And you have the best day ever. And I take my lunch break, and I go to the school, and I take my son lunch. I have lunch with him.
Mm-hmm. Wow. You know what, Kathy? Your whole story is wonderful, and it's made this show incredible. Anytime you want to call back, you got the hotline number. You're more than welcome to do so. Hey, that's a tough situation. She's a single parent, single mom. She's dealing with a boy that's bordering on manhood. I mean, at some point, how do you deal with a child that's rearing up? A lot of times in that situation, the dad's got to be in play. When the dad is physically there, what I've recognized is, especially with my own children, they settle down. Like whenever I go to hang, their mother will be like, they've been going crazy. They've been wilding, bouncing off the walls, arguing with. When I show up, it's settled. Because I think they know I'm not going to tolerate any tomfoolery. And sometimes the look I give is a deterrent. Like, okay, that's enough. Like, that's one of my statements. I've had enough. And then they know, like, okay, let's fall easy because dad is not really cool with this right now. And a lot of people are making reference, especially the callers here, are making reference to the Bible. Proverbs 13:24. He that spareth the rod hateth his son, but he that loveth him chastiseth him. I love these words, chastiseth. In other words, he that loves his son whoops ass. Proverbs 19:18, chasten thy son while there is hope, and let not thy soul spare for his crying. Don't listen to the crying. The dude does something stupid, whoop ass. Okay? And we have a whole bunch of Bible verses. Proverbs 29:15, the rod and reproof give wisdom, but a child left to himself bringeth his mother to shame. The Bible is teaching us to put hands on the kids. But my question is, are there spanking alternatives? I don't know. Judy, do you know? We're going to find out in a few minutes. I got to take a quick break. But when I come back, we've got another guest that's going to join Judy. And we're going to go over these Twitter responses. Twitter is on fire right now. Follow me on Twitter at ZoWilliams or at Foxxhole, Foxxhole. Tonight's topic is sparing the rod really spoiling the child. Should you smack them down? Smack that up. Somebody call me and let me know. 855-369-9898. I'll be back in 2.2. Peace. Wow. How many of you want to spank your child into a sweet dream? I mean, just spank him until he falls asleep. And it's apropos. One of our interns was spanked into sleep. Spanked into slumber. Jesse, you hear him on Wednesday's show with Gary Payton and Speedy after the game. He said his grandfather spanked him into slumber. And when he arose, all was well. He was a new person. How is that possible? 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. I'm ZoWilliams, the voice of reason. I welcome you all. 855-369-FOX-9898. 855-369-9898 is the number to dial. Follow me on ZoWilliams.com or at Zo. Oh, wait a minute. It's Zo at, what is it? At ZoWilliams. I done fell out. Zo, right, at ZoWilliams. Or you can email me, Zo at SiriusXM.com. Get at me. Follow me. Listen, we have literally hundreds of Twitter responses. When I say hundreds, we got a whole stack from the at Foxxhole, which is Foxxhole, and at ZoWilliams. Please continue to hit me with your responses. I'm going to read them. But before I do that, let me read off a couple of spanking alternatives. Rule number 6, ignore it. Sometimes you can simply ignore misbehavior and your child will learn to modify it on his or her own. Is that true? I figure I'm going to figure it out myself. I don't know. I don't know if a child can figure it out itself. For example, if your child is whining in the grocery store, try saying, I can't hear you while you're whining. And then truly ignore them until the whining stops. Before long, they'll realize that the best way to maintain your attention, which is what they want, is to curb that unpleasant whine. Somebody call me right now, 855-369-9898, if you think that's a bunch of malarkey. I don't know. I remember my mother used to say, before I even went in the store, you're not getting anything. Don't ask for nothing. Don't bother me. And if you do, I'm going to put the smack down. I'm going to tell you, I got a spanking in the store. Remember they used to sell flip-flops in the store? Yeah. Yeah, she pulled out a brand new pair of flip-flops and wore me out because I was asking for some Fruity Pebbles. No, I think it was rice. It was Cocoa Krispies. That's what it was. Anyway, number 5, redirect and separate. Sometimes the most appropriate child discipline response is simply redirecting your child's attention. Disciplining your child in this way provides an opportunity to successfully behave. I don't know. Somebody call me if you agree or disagree. Set boundaries. At times, our children misbehave because they want us to tell them where the line is, right? Communicating a boundary tells your child that you believe they are capable of managing their own behavior within a certain context. Empower the child. How about that? Well, I got something to say to that, and I don't want to get off my tips here for effective discipline and spanking alternatives. Our crack team of researchers pulled this up. But what's crazy is sometimes, and I don't know, somebody can call in and let me know, is there an offense that a child does that doesn't warrant spanking? What kind of behavior or negative behavior, right, a child can do that doesn't warrant a spanking? Sometimes we spank for everything. Anyway, I'll go on. Develop a firm and serious tone of voice. How many people you know out there play with their kids too much? And now the kid can't differentiate between when you're serious and when you're playing. I don't know. 855-369-9898. Develop a firm and serious tone of voice. It's important for us as parents to realize that raising our voices or yelling only teaches our children to tune us out. Instead, develop a serious tone as opposed to a vociferous tone, a loud tone, right? Develop a serious tone you can turn on when you want your kids to know you mean business. Number 2, use praise to your advantage. A lot of times, and somebody call me and let me know if you agree or disagree with this. 855-369-9898. This is our conversation. I want you all to participate. What happens when we aggrandize or we blow up the negatives that our children do and we take the positives that they do for granted? Sometimes when you spank a kid, that's a traumatic moment. That's a big moment. That's an aggrandized situation. I'm out of bounds. My mama's whooping my ass. I must have done something wrong. But when they do something right, the occasion, the appreciation is not as powerful as the punish or as when they do something wrong. Somebody call me and let me know about this. And I know Judy is on with me right now. We have another guest. I'm going to introduce you shortly. Callers, we're going to get back to you. Twitter, keep building at ZoWilliams, at Foxxhole. Tonight's topic is sparing the rod, ruining the child. Is it really ruining the child? Or do we have better ways to do it? So use praise to your advantage. Genuine praise has a powerful effect on your child's behavior as well as their overall self-esteem. Does spanking ass lower the self-esteem? We'll go into that too, I guess. Set out opportunities to praise them each day. And number 1, establish a set of house rules. Create a set of 3 to 5 child discipline rules that apply in all situations. These are the house rules that apply all the time, even when they're not home. Somebody call me and let me know if you agree or disagree with those spanking alternatives. If you've just tuned in tonight, listen, we're talking about is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. I'm ZoWilliams, the voice of reason. It's Thursday night. We do this every Thursday. It's crazy. Get to your phone lines right now, 855-369-9898. And now, let me introduce our next guest. Now, he wrote a book called Why Spanking Doesn't Work. Call me right now. I know you niggas ain't cool. I know ain't nobody cool right now. There's a lot of people ain't cool right now. Just by the topic, the title of his book alone, a lot of people are upset why spanking doesn't work. Stopping this bad habit and getting the upper hand on effective discipline. Do you think he can do that? Do you think it's possible? Anyway, this guy wrote a book. He's a PhD, So he knows what he's talking about. Stopping this bad habit, and he's considering spanking a bad habit. Somebody call me right now. I'm just going to say Kathy from Georgia is tasing her son because he's out of pocket. Without further ado, let me introduce my next guest, Michael J. Marshall. He's a PhD. He wrote this book. It's an incredible book, and we have it right now, a physical copy in the studio. We'd love for you to come in and chime in with our callers and everything that we're talking about today. Is Sparing the Rod Really Spoiling the Child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. Michael J. Marshall, I want to welcome you to the Voice of Reason, and you're on right now with another author. Her name is Judy Arnall, Discipline Without Distress, 135 Tools for Raising Caring, Responsible Children Without Timeout, Spanking, Punishment, or Bribery. You guys are on together. I appreciate you for coming on, Michael. Let's talk.
Hi, Zoe. Thank you for having me on. Please call me Mike. It's a little bit easier to say than Michael, but I'm glad to be here, and I've been listening for the last hour, and there's a wide range of issues that are all very interesting, and I'm looking forward to kind of putting my thoughts on the subject and coming up with some alternative strategies to spanking like Judy did.
Yes, and I appreciate you for being on. I thank you very much. And a lot of our callers are definitely in need of some of your help and some of your insight. Michael is a psychologist, and he's going to tell us if spanking doesn't work, then why did I turn out okay, given my parents spanked me? So if spanking doesn't work and they spanked me, why did I turn out okay if it doesn't work?
Okay, I'd love to answer that one.
That's for you.
Okay, I would say that the reason that the kids turned out all right is because their parents loved them and not because their parents hurt them.
That's a good one. That's a good one. Who agrees or disagrees with Michael? I want you guys to call in. He says he'd like to be called Mike. Reach out to us right now, 855-369-9898. I got another question for you. Mike, what is the problem with spanking? Like, why is it really an issue when it's mandated by God? God must be right.
Okay, well, I would disagree that it's mandated by God because nowhere in the Bible does it say that Jesus ever laid his hands on the buttocks of a child. And the rod can be interpreted in different ways in the Bible. There's a verse that says, "Thy rod comfort me and guideth me, like the shepherd who guided the sheep to safety with the rod." He didn't beat the sheep with the rod. So it has different interpretations.
So maybe the rod was the favorite tool of spanking. Just like you said, it could be interpreted many different ways, right?
Yes, that is correct.
Absolutely. But my question is, it's obvious that over 88% of American parents are using spanking to some degree or another.
Yes.
Why is it so entrenched in our culture as a means of correcting children?
Mainly because it's easy and old habits die hard. It takes a lot more thought and a lot more effort, and it's a lot more complex to use positive parenting, but the research is pretty clear that it's superior to hitting kids because hitting kids has 13 undesirable side effects. It's kind of like taking a medication and gaining weight and then getting diabetes and getting sick.
Wow.
The side effect can be rather severe and kind of defeat the purpose of the original purpose of using it.
Wow. Can you just really run off the 13 adverse effects of spanking, and then we'll go to break? Just give us those 13.
Okay. All right. You've already mentioned a number of them, like it teaches aggression, and it lowers the child's self-esteem. It creates bad feelings like depression and anxiety. It alienates the child from the parents. I believe that's one that Judy mentioned. It creates suppression effects. The kids are less spontaneous and outgoing and creative because it kind of dampens down their spirit. Another one you mentioned, it creates antisocial behavior. And here's one, masochistic tendencies. This is very interesting because what the parent is doing is pairing love and pain. And so that's what masochism is. 8, it hinders learning and achievement. Judy mentioned that it shuts the child down. 9 is it models undesirable behaviors, teaches that might makes right rather than conflict and compromise. Number 10 is it does not eliminate the undesirable behavior. It tends to come back worse later on, and that's the main reason I say spanking doesn't work. It only appears to work in the short term. Number 11 is it makes children more likely to engage in the forbidden behavior, so it makes them oppositional. 12, it raises the punishment threshold, and what that means is that the punishment has to keep being raised. It's like
No. And I hate to interrupt you, but that is Georgia and her situation where she had to pull out, her name is Kathy from Georgia, she had to pull out a taser. As
That's
they get
exactly
older,
what I was thinking when she was mentioning that story, is it's escalating, and that's the problem, is you have to escalate to keep it working because of the tolerance that's built up. Like you said, they tune out after a while. And then lastly, and probably the most serious, is it causes physical harm. 1,000 kids are killed every year in the name of physical punishment. Millions others are injured.
Okay, Michael, we got to take a quick break, but let me tell you, you've raised the value of the show already. If you're just tuning in, is Sparing the Rod Really Spoiling the Child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. That's the Gap Band. I'm wondering right now, are you bombing on your kid? Did you drop the bomb on your child for getting a D? Somebody call me right now. I'll be back at 2.2, 855-369-9898. Peace. Oh, my God, this show is off the chain. You don't understand how much feedback we're getting from the internet, email. I mean, it's going crazy. Facebook, Twitter, at Foxxhole, at ZoWilliams. Both Twitter pages are on fire right now. Get to the phone lines. They're on fire, too. 855-369-9898. Tonight's topic is Sparing the Rod Really Spoiling the Child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. I'm ZoWilliams, the voice of reason on Foxxhole Radio, Sirius XM 98. I'm here every Thursday. The phone lines, again, is 855-369-9898. Really quickly, let me reintroduce you guys to my guests who are on right now. They're on the phone. They're incredible. They're accomplished. I love it. You know, we only bring the highest quality people to the Voice of Reason to share their expertise and insight with you. We're going to have them interact with the callers because we're going to go to those phone lines. But number one, we have Judy Arnall, Discipline Without Distress. 135 tools for raising caring, responsible children without timeout, spanking, punishment, or bribery is her book. She is the author of that. That is Judy Arnall. Also, just joining us as of a few minutes ago, Michael, who likes to be called Mike, Michael J. Marshall. He wrote a book called Why Spanking Doesn't Work, Stopping This Bad Habit and Getting the Upper Hand on Effective Discipline. It's a great topic. We're having a great time. But before we get back into the conversation, let me go over a couple of pros and cons of corporal punishment. Now, corporal punishment, of course, corporal means body. I think that's Latin or something. Corporal punishment, intentional act of disciplining by inflicting physical pain as retribution, payback for an offense or wrongdoing. That's why we played the James Brown record, The Payback. Pros, it is a deterrent. Corporal punishment is usually an effective behavioral deterrent. Then, also, it brings compliance. Do as I say, or I'm going to put the monkey knuckles down on you. Increases immediate short-term compliance. Costs. With little or no cost, corporal punishment is affordable to everyone. Anybody can get a spanking. Quick. Corporal punishment is both quick and save time. How many times you got smacked in a flash for something you was doing that you thought nobody saw? Let me tell you, when I was a little kid, I got a spanking, right? And it happened in a flash. But you know why it happened in a flash? Because I almost destroyed the entire projects. Let me tell you what I did. There was a bottle of 409. I had to be around 7. And I was like, I'm going to clean the socket, the electrical socket. So what I did was took the 409 bottle and squirted it inside the socket until electricity came out of the socket and burnt off my eyebrows. What I then did was ran and hid behind the door of, we had this big door, and the entire section of the projects in Alton Park, Chattanooga, Tennessee. The entire section that we were in lost electricity. And then my sister came and was like, there he is. I said, what are you talking about? I didn't do anything. Well, if you didn't do anything, where are your eyebrows? Explain that. Well, the eyebrows gave me away, burnt off the front of my afro, and I got a spanking as well. It was crazy. I got the spanking of my life at that time. So that's a deterrent, right? It's quick. Right or wrong, corporal punishment definitely teaches both right and wrong. Here are the cons. Now, Mike Marshall, the writer of Why Spanking Doesn't Work, Stopping the Bad Habit and Getting the Upper Hand on Effective Discipline. I mean, he covered some of these cons. Self-esteem. Corporal punishment can lower self-esteem to both the punisher and the punishee. May have long-term psychological impacts as well. Unnecessary. There are other means of education that are effective. Hostility. Those people receiving punishment are more likely to be instilled with rage and hostility, even in adulthood. Violence. Corporal punishment trains children to be violent to other children and educates them that it is an acceptable means of education. And then there's child abuse. For the punishment to typically continue working, more punishment, pain, or force may be necessary, which can often result in child abuse. And that goes back to my story earlier with my youngest child. I told his mother, you got to get him back to town. You got to get him back here and let him get in my energy, because at a certain age, little boys disconnect from mom anyway, and they need that daddy energy to offset what you do, because every time you get mad at him, you've got to raise the ante. You got to up the ante when spanking him. And we heard a caller who called in and validated that, and my youngest son, who's 9 years old, is going through that right now. Here's some Twitter responses. At I'm not your sponsor. Regarding my question, is it possible to raise kids without punishment? He says, yes, they're called serial killers. That's what he says. At Rick, he quotes, he says, beat that ass. Just beat that ass. At Pen Therapy, in the 70s, it was so unacceptable for a little boy to be feminine. My cousin never forgave my dad for verbally and by today's standards, physically abusing him. Maybe he turned out to be homosexual. I don't know. I don't know if corporal punishment is the secret elixir for homosexuality. I don't know. 855-369-9898. Is sparing the rod spoiling the child? An in-depth look at discipline, child rearing, and child abuse. 855-369-9898. Judy Arnall and Michael J. Marshall are on the phone with us right now. We're going to go to callers in a second. I want you guys to interact with them. Is that okay with you guys?
Yes.
Oh, great. Are you there, Judy?
Yes, I am. That's great.
Okay, cool. We're going to go to some callers in one quick second after I go through a couple more of these Twitter responses. At BDZA, I don't understand that. Physical violence does not work. You have to earn your child's respect. If they don't respect you, they're not going to listen. At Louvan Music, regarding spanking or lecture better, the two combined have a better effect as opposed to just one alone, right? Let's see. At Philly Birdman, regarding what he got spanked with, the whole tree, if she could. Open hand by my dad. In other words, dad used to smack the hot sauce out of his mouth. At Rob Huntsville, elderly neighbors would make my sister and I kiss and make up. Who wants to kiss their sister? It worked. That was an alternative form of spanking. You know what? You stole those oranges from my tree. Now go kiss your sister in the mouth. Wow. 855-369-9898. We're going to get to these callers right now. Let's go right now. Who do we have? Reggie from Georgia. Let's talk, man.
Hey, how we doing, sir?
I'm good, brother. How you? Thanks for holding on.
Man, I appreciate it. Listen, I just have been listening, and I got a bunch of mixed views because I'm listening to everything everybody's saying. I believe everybody got good input, but what you got to understand is, when do I use whatever I decide to use? Because if you train up the Bible also says train up a child in the way that they should go, and they will not depart when they get older. Yeah. So here's the thing: if I'm teaching a baby from birth to 3 or 4, maybe there's a chance that I might not have to discipline them.
But when I'm dealing with some teenagers who's going to fight me, who's going to spit, who's going to curse and tell me what they're going to do in my house, sometimes you have to use force. And it's not saying I don't love you, or it's not saying I don't hate you, that I do hate you or anything like that. It's just saying, look, I'm not standing for this. I'm not going to tolerate it. Because you can't go cuss the officer out. You can't spit in the officer's face, because if you do, then there's also a form of retaliation from the officer. Is there not, Judy?
Uh-oh. That's to you, Judy.
Of course, yeah. Yeah, there is definite retaliation and consequences in the real world. But before you get to the teens, you got to teach your kids how real people live. Like, we're raising kids in a different age now. There's no space for fear in parenting, because what you do is you teach those kids not to come to you, not to respect you, not to listen to you. And very often they go out and they're the problem children.
Do children feel like they're being judged when they come to their parents? Do they feel like their parents don't understand them? And when we get to a space of, I'd like to call it disclosure, the child feels like it's easier to disclose to a friend than it is to disclose to the parent because of the judgment and potential punitive response. Michael?
Yeah, that's part of the alienation. That's a normal developmental sequence in adolescence, is that children do tend to bond and become close with their friends, and their friends are their highest priority. But if the parent has alienated the child, they're just going to increase the likelihood of the child going to friends and not talking to the parent. So starting much earlier, communication should be fostered in a positive way, so that when the child is an adolescent, they're not alienated from the parent, and they will feel comfortable approaching the parent and discussing and problem solving, rather than avoiding and just seeking out friends, which oftentimes can become negative influence peer groups too.
Right. And as a psychologist, isn't anger, especially in adults, the display of anger, frustration, we all know that anger and frustration are closely related. And whenever we're frustrated, that typically means we're not getting something that we want. So we get frustrated. Maybe the child isn't behaving in the way that we want them to. Maybe the child didn't make the decision that we would like for them to have made. So we get frustrated, and then we get to a point where we're angry. When we get angry, is that not a loss of control?
Yes.
Right.
Yeah.
So with that being the case, if you're angry with your child, is spanking, then I'm asking all the listeners out there, is this the best way to go when you're angry? How do you spank, in a way where it's, I don't know anybody that spanks when they're calm. I just don't. Like, I have to calmly whoop your ass so you can understand what I'm talking about. Somebody call me, 855-369-9898. Here's a quote from Phil Donahue. Spanking and verbal criticism have become to many parents more important tools of child rearing than approval. That's what Phil Donahue says. What happens to those children that run over their parents? Is fear the only key? Somebody call me, 855-369-9898. Let's go to the callers. Jeff from Chicago, you're in the Voice of Reason. Let's talk.
Hello. So really enjoy your show. I don't always agree with what you say, but always intellectually stimulating. Really want to get into this particular topic. I really feel is when you reference the Bible and you talk about sparing the rod spoils the child, you have to take it within the context of what it meant. And God was talking about reverential fear. And that is that when God was talking about how he disciplined the children of Israel, or whatever the case may be, he's talking how they reverenced him, or they feared him and reverenced him. And that's similar to how a child should have that relationship with a parent. They should have reverential fear. And I say that in the context of when you talk about disciplining the child, you discipline a child, and either form without love doesn't work. So as your the commentators that you have on the show tonight, even the techniques that they're talking about, if they don't have love coupled with those particular techniques, that won't work either. So as you have experienced as well as myself, I had a mother who was probably 4'10", 4'11". My brother and I were big guys. She was a public school teacher for Chicago, but she had total control. But it was because she loved us. Now, did she go outside and get the switches and braid them and tear us up? Absolutely. But as we grew into adults, we reverenced her through the fear, reverential fear, that never spoke wrongly to her, never raised our voice. So I think when you take that within the context of a child and a relationship with a child, without love, I don't care if they use the techniques that the people who you have on the panel tonight are using, or you use discipline that which is corporal punishment. Without love, neither one works.
Okay, Judy and Michael, would you like to respond to what is being said right now?
Go ahead,
I think
Judy.
love is essential in any parenting relationship, but the damage is when you combine love and fear. You're teaching your child in their very first love relationship in the family that it's okay to hurt somebody you love in the name of parenting or whatever. And we wonder why our divorce rate is around 50%. We learn to punish our loved ones in that first relationship.
Good point. Good point.
And you
Michael?
say, we're okay?
Yeah, I agree that love is the highest value and has the greatest impact on positive development of a child. And your caller's absolutely right. You know, without love, nothing else will happen. Everything follows love. But I would, rather than combine love and fear, I would rather combine love with encouragement.
Right.
And I think that would just have a better outcome. Although love and fear, if there's enough love, you can have a decent outcome. And I'm sure your caller is a very upstanding, successful man.
Right. He sounds pretty intelligent.
But I would say it was in spite of being hit and assaulted as a child rather than because of. I would say it's because of the love, really.
And I want to thank the caller for reaching out. We appreciate that. That was very good information. But most religious people disagree with me because, as I've stated in many other shows, I am pro-God, anti-religion. I love God, not really big on religion. And the reason being is because things are always taken out of context and falsely or erroneously attributed to God. And I just think, a lot of this stuff is man-made and we're making it up on the fly. Now, as it pertains to children and discipline, I think for many parents, the only tool in their disciplinary toolbox is spanking. And if you don't have a strong psychological game, if you're not reading books on how to become a better parent, if you're not challenging the ideas you were raised with, and you're not modifying and looking for the chinks in your own psychological armor, how can you spank a child and deliver the meaning in context for why you did it? Most people are doing it because they're frustrated. Most people are doing it out of anger. Maybe your mama didn't, but a lot of mamas are, and a lot of daddies are, because that's all they have in their tank. That's all they got. You know what? You did something wrong. I'm going to spank you for it. Well, why are you spanking me? And what does spanking teach me? And how does spanking make me better? And why should I appreciate being spanked? A lot of parents don't have the answers to those questions. Just consider yourself fortunate, brother. You don't have to agree with me. You don't have to. I'm not here for you to agree with me, but I am here to challenge the way you think. 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. Andrew Grogan Kaler of the University of Michigan. Even minimal amounts of spanking can lead to an increased likelihood of antisocial behavior by children. If you agree or disagree, the phone lines are open, 855-369-9898. I got to take another quick break. The topic is crazy. Phone lines, stay on. I'm coming to you. Is sparing the rod really spoiling the child? Somebody talk to me about it. I'll be back in 2.2, 855-369-9898. That's 855-FOX-9898. Does spanking create a stand? Right? A psychopath? I don't know. Tonight's topic is sparing the rod, spoiling the child. We're talking about child rearing. We're talking about child abuse. We're talking about disciplining your children. It's a great topic. We have great guests. Judy Arnall, Discipline Without Distress, 135 tools for raising caring, responsible children without timeouts, spanking, punishment, or bribery, as well as PhD, Michael J. Marshall, why spanking doesn't work, stopping this bad habit and getting the upper hand on effective discipline. I have to make a correction. Our intern here, Jesse, wasn't the guy who got beat into slumber. It was a Twitter respondent at Twitterston. That's his Twitter, at Twitterston. My granddad beat me to sleep once. When I woke up, it was like all was right with the world. That's what he says. We have another Twitter respondent at Big Ben Zom, Z-O-M, Big Ben or Big Ren Zom. That's an interesting name. At Big Ren Zom. The problem I have with your guests is that they don't understand that what doesn't work for one child doesn't always work for another. I guess he's saying there are different ways to discipline different children. Some children need a spanking. Some children need a lecture. Some children need time out. Some children need their things taken away. He's saying one way doesn't work for every child. That's an interesting perspective there. And here's another great quote on the situation. I found it. It's anonymous. Too many parents are not on spanking terms with their children. That's an anonymous quote. 855-369-9898. We got callers. We got guests. But before I go to the callers, I want to ask Michael another quick question. You know, I've read about some studies that say spanking is effective and not harmful. Doesn't this cancel out all of the studies that you're referring to that say otherwise?
No, and the reason is that the vast majority of studies show that it is. Occasionally you're going to have a study that says it's not, but generally those are easily discredited because they relied upon self-report. They didn't have control groups. They weren't very scientific, or they had an underlying hidden agenda because there was a bias in the author. But if you take like the meta-analyses, like the Gershoff study, where he looked at 88 different studies and found that combined, they're all saying that there's only one benefit of spanking, and there's 10 disadvantages. The one benefit is that it temporarily suppresses the behavior, and then the 10 problems with it are a lot of the ones that I read at the beginning.
Wow. So really spanking is short term, and the effect of spanking is long term. And we have the Gershoff study here in our, amongst our research that we've compiled for this show. Ladies and gentlemen, you're listening to Zoe Williams, the voice of reason on Foxxhole Radio. We're having a wonderful topic today. It's very interesting, very, very, very intriguing. We're talking about spanking children, pros and cons, good and bad, right or wrong. Do you do it? It's crazy. We're going to go to some more callers because the phone lines are just off the chain right now. And Twitter is still off the chain. Foxxhole is at FOXXHOLE. Please continue. We have a whole, when I say a stack of responses, they're here. Keep sending them. We're going to read them. And we also have at ZoWilliams. That's my personal Twitter account. Reach out to me. I do respond to people on this account. It is the real me. It's not someone administering it. So you can reach out to me at ZoWilliams. Let's get active. 855-369-9898. Lynn from Virginia. Could you talk to Michael and Judy? Let's go.
Yeah, I've been sitting listening, and I'll tell you, what I really believe is that the things that they're saying are effective, but they're only effective if you have an ultimatum. I use spanking. I have 3 children of my own. The biggest problem that fails with the spanking process is that parents fail to be consistent. If you promise something to your children and do not deliver, your children, look, this is an analogy that I use that I a lot of people may disagree with, but children, especially young children, are just like your specifically canines, because somebody is going to be the alpha when you're dealing with, say, wolves. There's going to be an alpha in that group. And if no one steps up, then one of the wolves becomes the alpha male or the leader in that process.
You're saying children are like dogs? Michael and Judy, could you guys respond to that?
Well, I would say that definitely kids do need a leader. They need their parents as leaders in the family, but there's a way to gain respect and contribution and responsibility, but without force. And we do it in the workplace. We do it with other adults. Kids are just like adults in terms of how they feel about people. So we have to treat them with the same dignity and respect as we would another person.
That's
but
good.
There are many ways.
That's a great point, Judy. That's a great point. But Michael, his reference to the dog reminds me of Pavlov's dog.
Right. I like that reference because
could you go deeper? Could you go deeper and let our listeners know what that means?
Okay, B.F. Skinner did his research with rats. So animals can be a good model for human behavior. So I like that analogy. And she's right, is that there is always a leader in a social group, whether it's with canines or people. And but leadership can be demonstrated in different ways. One is with violence and fear. And another is through the power of knowledge. We tend to respect leaders that have knowledge. We respect leaders that are patient and fair. And since we're very cooperative as a social species, if the leader is given the role of being the leader, we tend to cooperate with it. And if they set rules, and if they do it in a fair, patient, respectful manner, people really enjoy following those rules.
Wow, that's a great point. Caller, I really appreciate you reaching out. You're opening up dialogue. I have another quote here. We're going to raise a lost generation of children unless they are properly disciplined and properly spanked. Charles Eddie Weissman. Caller, Smiley from Texas. We're in here with Michael J. Marshall as well as Judy Arnall. What do you have to say?
Hey, what's going on? So, look, I ain't got no documentary or nothing. I'm going to get right to it. At the age 13, I call myself being tested. My dad knocked me smooth the fuck out, all right? I came to her. My mama was saying if I was all right and seeing if I need to go to the doctor. To this day, I love that man with all my heart. You understand? And I don't know what world these cats living in, but love hurts. And if you don't put the rod on their ass and let them know, hey, look, I love you enough to let you know I'm not going for the BS, son. You're going to make the right decision. People talking, what age do we live in where kids are talking to their parents? I'm 34 years old. I ain't never wanted to talk to my parents like that. You got cats want to be their kids' friends. No, you be the parent. That's what the fuck you're a parent for.
Wow, I love the call. I love the passion. But do you prove that anger comes from getting your ass whooped? You sound pretty angry. Now, they just said getting your ass whooped produces some antisocial behavior. He sounded like all he needed was a gun and a ski mask, and he was on his way into a liquor store. That's what it sounded like to me. Yeah, I agree with what he's saying, because let me go deeper with him. I appreciate his call, though, seriously, because I've even had this conversation with my oldest son's mother. I say, listen, there's going to come a time, and Michael, you know this, there's going to come a time where that teenage boy wants to challenge dad. What should dad do when the teenage boy rears up? Just like the caller, Kathy from Georgia. She said her son balled up his fist, punching the wall. Sometimes the testosterone gets the best of the teenage boy, and he wants to challenge the nearest thing. How do you deal with that, Doc?
The way you deal with it is clearly, not through a power struggle, not through violence. But you do deal with it with consequences, and the consequences can be set, in advance. in agreement with the parent and the teenager. You know, if you want to use the car keys a Saturday night and go out on a date, then, you know, these are the rules, and stick to it. Earlier, one of your callers mentioned consistency. You know, you can't give in. So there are many, many consequences that mirror the real world.
Right.
You know, if you don't go to work, you don't get your paycheck. And so we're really teaching them to operate in the real world, you know, without teaching them violence, without teaching them aggression, without teaching them that love hurts, like your previous caller said. You know, I think that's a pretty good lesson in life, how to be a very, very, very successful, high-functioning person, teaching that type of lesson.
Well, what happens when the child gets hip to the game and he recognizes that mom or dad or mom and dad are in total control of all of the resources, and you understand what that means about the inherent power of a relationship? If someone has more control over the resources, they inherently have more power in that relationship.
Right.
So what happens when the child gets hip to the power imbalance in the relationship and starts getting those resources from outside of the relationship, i.e. the car, i.e. money? They just go out on their own and start creating alternative ways to pull in those resources. What happens to your power then?
Well, that's real life, because that is another developmental task, and that is to grow autonomous from our parents. And so it's best for the parents to recognize that and manage it and guide it into a positive direction rather than negative.
Well, you know what? Go ahead, Judy. Go ahead.
I would say every parent runs out of power as their kids grow up if you rely on punishments and rewards. But what you gain, if you don't use those two, what you gain is influence with your kids, and you will never run out of that.
Wow, go deeper. I want my callers and listeners to hear you on this. You will never run out of influence as a parent. Go deeper into that.
Well, your influence is your experience and your knowledge you can give to kids, and that sticks with them when you're not around, and that's what keeps them safe and have good relationships. But, yeah, every parent runs out of power because you can't control a son who's towering over you, and you can't control a daughter with money and a car.
Wow, that's a good point. And like I said before, in the beginning, a parent is a dictator and a tyrant for their child, as in the beginning, from a baby on up, you know. But once they get to a point where they can start to think for themselves and make decisions, parents have to transition from the tyrant to a mentor. They have to be a parental ambassador. Hey, let me give you this suggestion. Have you thought of it this way? Did you think this thing through? They can't come in with the same overbearing, tyrannical do as I say as the child gets more knowledge of self and more resources and power in their understanding of themselves. They can't just do that forever. 855-369-9898. After our caller just really jumped off on some anger, and I love the way he talked. Smiley was great from Texas. He was a great caller. I think it's time for a song break. I'm going to take a quick song break, and I'll be back in 2.2. But let Devo break it down how you should deal with children. I think that's what we should do. Or was it Luca? It could be Luca. I love Luca. Luca was a great song back in the 90s who talked about abuse. It was a great record. Listen to it and tell me what you think. We'll be back in 2.2. How many of you out there are cracking that whip? Get out of line and see what happened. 855-369-9898. ZoWilliams, the voice of reason. We're having a great time tonight. We're talking about sparing the rod. Is it really spoiling the child? We're talking about how to bring them up, child rearing, discipline, and child abuse. We've got some more Twitter responses. @BabiesRule just said, I just dished out a spanking 2 days ago to my 5-year-old and cried after he fell asleep. Help, please. Wow. And that goes back to what we said earlier regarding how the emotional trauma of getting a spanking doesn't always affect just the baby. It affects, remember that old saying, this is going to hurt me more than it hurts you, but typically it never does. But this is a perfect example of how parents can be hurt administering this corporal punishment as well. Let's see, at Ferrari_future regarding would there be a Columbine, right? And this is a tough question. Would there have been a Columbine if those kids were spanked more? I mean, that's a heavy one. The parents would have been killed too, is what they said. Their response to that question. 855-369-9898. That's the number to dial. We're having a great time here. I got one more quote to read here. It says, tired mothers find that spanking takes less time than reasoning and penetrates sooner to the seat of memory. That's William Durant. We're having a great conversation with Michael J. Marshall. He is the author of Why Spanking Doesn't Work, Stopping This Bad Habit and Getting the Upper Hand on Effective Discipline, as well as our wonderful guest. She's been here all show long. She's great. Judy Arnall, Discipline Without Distress. 135 tools for raising caring, responsible children without timeout, spanking, punishment, or bribery. I suggest you all go get her book and their books. A friend of mine, Louis Dix, I was at his comedy special last night, and it was great. Louis Dix has another venue, and if anybody knows anything about L.A. history, there's a place called Maverick's Flat where a lot of comedians got their start from. It has a deep history. Louis is doing a whole new show there on Wednesdays at 8 p.m., Maverick's Flat, 4225 Crenshaw Boulevard. I showed up last night. Buddy Lewis was there. Louis Dix was there. Guy Black was there. Chris Spencer was there. They had a bunch of great comedians, and it was a good thing. Louis will be there every Wednesday at 8 p.m. I think I'm going to come out because it's in my part of town. I'm going to support the homie. Really quickly, I want to do this. Michael and Judy, people are asking us right now where they can get your books, where they can find you guys. I want to find out right now what your individual websites are, email, contact, all of that stuff, because we're getting down to the end of the show, and I'm going to have to wrap you guys soon. Please tell us where we can find you, where people can buy your book, and people can support your movement. Michael?
Okay, the book can be purchased on Amazon.com, and if you can't afford it, just go to my website, stopspanking.com, and I'll send you one for free.
Wow. Michael, can I say I truly and honestly and deeply appreciate you for coming on the show and sharing your information. You've been a blessing to us here tonight, and thank you for being on.
Thank you. It was a wonderful show. I really enjoyed it, Zoe, and I'd be happy to come back anytime. Thank you
Absolutely.
very much.
Absolutely. Judy, where can they find you?
My book is on Amazon.com, too, and people can find me at professionalparenting.ca. And I just want to say parenting is the hardest job in the world. Don't be afraid to ask for help. There's lots out there.
And once again, Judy, listen, all the information you've provided to us was invaluable. We truly appreciate you. Thank you very much. And just like Michael, when we do this again, it might not be for a while because I hate redoing topics, but when we do it again, I'm definitely reaching out to you. You have been a blessing to our show. Thank you very much for coming.
Thanks.
This was great. I got another Twitter response here. At Rob Huntsville says, Bill Cosby on The Cosby Show told Theo, I brought you in this world and I will take you out. I remember that episode. It was a great episode. I want to take one more caller. I want to take George from Indiana. I might take two callers. George from Indiana, talk to me. Make it quick. You got 10 seconds to say what's on your mind.
Imagine that.
Talk to me, George. And he's gone. Thanks, George. You'll never be allowed to come in anyway. Again, Gerald from Texas, talk to me.
Hello. Hey, so I think you're pretty good at what you're doing. But anyway, I was going to say that there's a medium in between to where you spank the child, you talk to the child, you reason with him. If he doesn't want to reason with it, then you have no choice but whoop his little ass. And,
wow.
I think that'll work. I think that's more beneficial. That's pretty much how I do my kids.
All right, brother. Thank you. I appreciate the compliment. You know I was going to go to another caller because there's so many callers on. But let me just do this. When it comes to raising children, we are responsible for a life. And sometimes punishment, spanking comes too easily. I think the things that we as parents have to work on is appreciation, is positive reinforcement, is acknowledgement. Sometimes we get so frustrated with our kids, we forget that they're human beings with a perspective and an opinion. Sometimes we have to create space to allow those children to express their differences, to express their grievances, to express their anger, to express their disapproval with us. We have to create a space that is free of reprisal. Like they won't be judged, they won't be spanked. Just tell me how you really feel. Because a lot of times as children grow up, they grow and disconnect from us because we are the authority. We are the judge and jury. And when that happens, they create bonds. It's already been researched and studied. They create bonds outside the home. And the home is supposed to be the place where the most support is at. Spanking, I agree with to a certain degree. But I also agree with mentoring your children. Feeding them a philosophy that will nurture them for the rest of their lives. You can't just whoop ass without a real meaningful philosophy behind why you do it. It has to be in context. It can't come from frustration. It can't come from anger. It can't come because you're a limited parent. You got to be honest with yourself and say, I need some more tools. It isn't just, let me spank you and that'll correct everything. I love all my callers, even the ones I don't agree with, even the ones that don't agree with me. I appreciate you all for participating. I'm here every Thursday. The number to dial is 855-369-9898. If you agree or disagree, please email me at zo@SiriusXM.com. That's my personal email. I check it all the time. That's zo@SiriusXM.com. Follow me on Twitter at ZoWilliams, ZoWillims. Follow me on Facebook because I do this fully integrative conversation all week long leading up to the show where I spit out all of these questions that I hit you with. Yo, this is an integrative platform. Let's have fun. Let's do it. Let's learn. Let's grow. Let's disagree. I love you all. I love the participation. Thank you very much, and I'll see you next week.